it is my absolute pleasure to welcome Princess Ventura, Regional Director at Urbis, to Digital Dialogue Unfiltered. Welcome, Princess.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
You bet. So I'm obsessed with the built environment and city shaping. And I've been really looking forward to this chat for that reason and a whole heap of other reasons. But for those who are perhaps a little less familiar with Urbis, perhaps you can share with us a bit about yourself, Urbis's story, mission, and connection to Greater Western Sydney.
Yes, sure. There's a lot of questions in there. Uh, Remind me if I forget one of them. Urbis has been around for quite some time. We're over 60 years old now. We're a multidisciplinary consulting firm where we operate from 8 offices across Australia as well as Singapore. We're multidisciplinary in that we're probably best known for being the country's largest planning firm, but we're more than just a planning firm. We have valuations as a practice. We've got urban designers, we've got public policy experts, we've got evaluators, and the particular area that I belong to technically is the property economics and research practice, which is the team that I lead here in Sydney. In terms of our connection to Western Sydney, as we know, Parramatta in particular, is really truly the center of Sydney now, and that's going to shift even more in the future. We've started to show our dedication to that cause and to be able to not only service our clients better, but also be able to attract the brightest talent out there. We have committed to a Parramatta office. We've been in that office now for 3 years. And I'm excited to announce that we're renewing that commitment again and we're going to go even bigger. So in April, you'll see us move to a new office premises. We're going to be part of the exciting Western Sydney Uni Engineering and Innovation Hub.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that's absolutely fantastic. And that's really fundamental to what Urbis is about. We really have one simple goal at Urbis. It's to connect the brightest minds to shape cities and communities for a better future. And you and I both know that population growth, future population growth, some 70 or 80% of that is expected to occur west of Homebush. So it's really exciting to be part of that center of future
Yeah.
growth.
Oh, okay. So unbelievable. You hit all of the questions with an answer, and you made an announcement about reaffirming your commitment to your Parramatta office. We're off to a good start. So I think some of the good work that Urbis has done and that you've done, we've really been able to unpack in the Reimagining Campbelltown City Centre Master Plan. Can we just start with a really obvious question? Why did Campbelltown need to be reimagined?
Campbelltown really needed to be reimagined, I guess, for two key reasons. One, Campbelltown has always been known for being masters of their own destiny, being very proud about who they are. They are steeped in history. They have always been multicultural. They've
Mhm.
got really strong groundings in terms of Aboriginal heritage as well, on one hand. And on the other hand, they're expecting some really strong population growth to occur, not just in Campbelltown, but in and around that whole Southwest growth area. So they realized that there are really fantastic opportunities on one hand to be able to leverage its past, its story, its history, and its values, as well as capitalize on the opportunities that are ahead on one hand. And on the other hand, there really is a need to rethink Campbelltown, that not everything is positive and rosy as we know about Campbelltown. There are also stories about Campbelltown that don't really resonate with investors or don't really resonate with some of our younger, talented future residents. So it's about that. It's about leveraging its true strengths from
Mhm.
a location and values perspective, as well as start to address those weaknesses or those fears that
Yeah.
investors and residents have about Campbelltown that might be true or some of them might be perceptions, but whether it's true or truth or reality, really, those are things that they felt that they really need to address.
Yeah. So particularly the pillars of the master plan, I think set a really great benchmark for other cities in both the Western Parkland City and the Central River City to learn from or to use as a benchmark in perhaps their own reimaginings. What were some of the lessons learned that you could take from that experience if an opportunity arose again to work with a local government area or the state government even to reimagine a precinct of that scale?
Yeah, sure. So we've done so many master plans. Urbis has been involved in a number of master plans across Australia, not just Australia. We've done this as well in Middle East and in Asia. And it was a fantastic opportunity for the team because it was a true partnership and a co-design. It was very much grounded on a co-design process, which meant actually that we learned from each other, that there was also capacity building in that format. So the things that we've learned are, I'm an economist, so I have to say evidence, right? So so Campbelltown is unique in that it's both place-based as well as evidence-based,
Mm,
this master plan, which means that it doesn't have generic statements as to its aspirations. It has really inspired way in terms of framing what the aspirations are of Campbelltown that very much come from the stakeholders. And if you read through those 6 pillars, they're very spirited. They're not your typical master plan. Your typical master plan will say, we're going to double employment by this.
yeah,
We're going to diversify the economy.
yeah,
But if I just pick some of the pillars and aspirations of the Campbelltown, Reimagining Campbelltown Master Plan, they talk about confident and self-driven. And it says we don't wait for others to act. We own our future. So spirited.
yeah,
No gray to be seen. It's about connecting the waterways and the greenways. It's about the good life. They talk about the good life, that they're inclusive, they're diverse, they're friendly, that people choose. Their aspiration is people choose the Campbelltown lifestyle as opposed to one that is pushed on by affordability issues.
mhm,
So you can see how communities' aspirations are very integral to the master plan. Secondly, it's evidence-based, and measurement and evaluation is a really critical part of the master plan, and reviewing that timely to make sure that's still fit for purpose. So it's everything is about reimagining Campbelltown is looking at what the market and economic basis is. How do they leverage their competitive strengths? And it's not just something that is pretty on a plan. That means that this is something that is live and that very much is not just aspirational on one hand and pushing the envelope, but also realistic and grounded in market reality.
yeah. You just spoke about the kind of spirited nature of the pillars, and kind of that obviously came from a deep engagement and consultation with the community. And I think key to that is where people live. They might not live in the most glamorous part of the precinct. It might be a smaller town centre that they live in, for instance. And I'm wondering what you see the role of these smaller places or town centres within the hierarchy of urban systems, what role they play in unlocking opportunity, I guess, for the people that live there and for the place itself.
I think they're key to the livability of our cities. They're really key to a lot of aspirations, including the concept that the Greater Sydney Commission has of a 30-minute
Yeah.
city. Uh, they really, I think, are key to, as we know, talent. There's a war for talent, and that war is now globalized, given how quickly we had to pivot and work much more flexibly than what we've had pre-COVID, which means we really have to be, as a global city, a compelling destination for talent, for people at the end of the day. And the town centers are really, as you know, it's the in-between spaces that give a place
Yeah.
spirit and life. It's not the buildings, it's the
Yeah.
spaces that happen in between. So I think it's these town centers that really can play a critical role to that livability and magnetism of Sydney, to global talent, to the brightest talent from overseas. Because our little town centers, they are steeped in history. They've come up organically, firstly. Secondly, they already have a lot of amenity and infrastructure built in, right? They're usually in their train stations. They usually have schools already. They already have
Yeah.
hospitals. There's food and beverage precincts. There's parks. And as we know, as we travel, the places that we love are those that are really grounded in
Yeah.
in history, steeped in history, and they have a messiness to them. And
Yeah.
that messiness
Amen.
is both good and bad, right?
Yeah.
Bad in that we kind of have to, there's stuff to that messiness that we really need to manage, to make
Yeah.
sure that they don't make people feel unsafe. But it's that messiness as well that makes that experience very exciting and interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that grit and that soul. And I love that you kind of have helped me to elevate my pitch to relook at some of these town centres in the Central River City, for instance, as enablers to all of these things. Because I think with the construction of the Aerotropolis in the parklands and just the general beauty of the eastern city, I think that we can sometimes get lost in the finer grain of the urban systems and how critical they are to, giving a place soul and breathing life into a place. Okay, one last question I'd like to ask you. And I hate to talk about COVID, but, we're in it. What legacy do you think that COVID will have on shaping future cities, if
Wow.
any? If any.
Wow, like that is that's an excellent question, and I must say not one that I've thought about, because we've always thought about COVID as this kind of temporary
Yeah.
pause on
Hmm.
our lives, right? I
Yeah.
think there are a number of legacies, obviously, that have been taunted around, such as the death of the CBDs, which, for one, I'm not really a fan of. I think the legacy, hopefully, because I am very optimistic, hopefully there are two legacies that COVID, to me, leaves behind. The first one is that we certainly have not wasted the pandemic in terms of building infrastructure, because we needed the jobs. So government had to step in and pump money into infrastructure. And since we weren't moving around, we were able to deliver that infrastructure actually much more efficiently and effectively. So hopefully that's something that, from people's perspective, citizens' perspective, is now an expectation of government. That as a citizen, as people, we do put that pressure on government to say, this investment, we've caught up now in terms of catch up infrastructure, that can be something that we do, um, not once in a lifetime, but something that we invest in regularly. And that goes beyond just roads,
Mhm.
that goes beyond public transport, that also goes into our hospitals, health, into education. We're seeing that uptick in investment with COVID. So one of the legacy, I hope, is that we really have a rolling cycle of continually improving our infrastructure. The second legacy that I'm hoping is that COVID would be good for working women, particularly working mothers, in that there's been decades where we've been advocating and showing evidence, the business case, as to why providing flexibility to employees is not only the right thing, but is good for business. And I think what COVID has done is kind of thrown us suddenly into this, force businesses to be flexible. It
Yes.
became business critical,
Yeah.
uh, to be flexible, to work from home, and trust between employee, employer, or companies had to be elevated
Yeah.
overnight in that equation. That, that as employees, as companies, we had to say, I trust
Yeah.
the future of our business is in your hands, and you now have to somehow figure out how to work now that you have no access to
Yes.
our office. So hopefully, I think that turned the dial into flexibility is really a good thing. And hopefully that furthers the equality, including the wage gap,
Yes.
and really compressing that wage gap between men and women, and have demonstrated the value that people can offer, regardless of where they're working from.
Yeah. Oh, I love that you went there. Yes. Princess, thank you as always for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you
Okay.
for having me.